Hi, this is your Lesson 8 writing. We're going to call it a review. If I write it, you write it. Please write this down. If you've already gotten this prompt and looked over it, then maybe this first part is just to help you. If you get to a point today where you're stuck, then the video will continue and you can get some ideas. So first thing we need to remind ourselves is anytime you have a writing prompt, you need to read it at least 2 times. So let's try it. Sometimes people recognize similarities between themselves and a character from a book or movie. This should say write about. Write about a character from a book or a movie who you think is similar to you. What do you have in common with this character? Use specific details and examples in your response. Alright, that's once. Let's read a second time and maybe circle or underline keywords. Sometimes people recognize similarities between themselves and a character from a book or movie. Write about a character from a book or movie who you think is similar to you. What do you have in common with this character? Use specific details and examples in your response. So ultimately, what I'm trying to figure out is my topic. What is everybody writing about who gets this prompt? And everybody is writing about something about similarities with a character from a book or movie. So that's all we need to say. What is similar? Similarities to a character, only one character, in a book or a movie. Now, could you do a TV show? I don't know, it says book or movie, so I would just stick with that. The second thing we need to figure out is our audience. Our topic, our audience, and our purpose. And there's no real specifics about our audience, it just doesn't tell us who we're writing for, so we're going to go with a general audience. And we always want to make sure it's formal writing. If you're thinking about tone for this, you could kind of think positive or negative, and that just depends on you. If you wanted to pick a character who's kind of the bad guy and list all the bad things, that's up to you. It's okay. The purpose for this is not explicit, but it says use details and examples, write about your similarities. You're basically just explaining. So you don't have to persuade or anything, you're just explaining. So the first thing you want to do is try to figure out a book or movie that has a character to whom you are similar. So I would suggest starting with a circle map and thinking about which characters am I similar to. And you're going to list out some characters, and maybe they're cartoons, maybe they're real people. Try to stay away from actors and actresses or writers. You're just thinking about the characters themselves. Once you have done that, you want to pick one, and you want to think about all the ways that you are similar to that person, to that character. And if all you do is come up with 3, it's probably going to be terrible. So try to think about several different things, and then you're going to group them into at least 2 categories. Maybe their appearance, maybe their personality, maybe their lifestyle, whatever it is. And then ultimately your thesis statement is your topic plus your categories. I don't expect you to have all this done at this second. I'm just reminding you that we want to brainstorm about characters, pick one, categorize these things into at least 2 big categories. And then our thesis statement is our topic plus our categories. Once you're finished with that, you're going to move on to the back, and you're going to think about how to compose an intro and conclusion. This is the graphic organizer I would suggest. I would remind you that the thesis statement you've already come up with should be the end of your introduction. So you could start out with a general statement about characters or similarities or something. You can narrow that down to maybe different types or attributes of characters, and then eventually you're going to list your character that you are similar to and why. For your conclusion, you want to restate your thesis. I'm going to say part 1, which would be the character from the book or movie. You're going to give the reasons or similarities, which are really just the categories from your thesis. And this last big part is the trouble I think some of you have with your essay, is you want to make a point. So what is the point of anybody finding any similarity to themselves and another character? Like, why should we do this? What's the point? Try to think like an anyone who type statement. That's where we are. So if you totally feel comfortable with this and are ready to start, go ahead, start. If you want me to show you an example, then stick with me. Alright, so this is just a sample. Please do not copy this. It would make no sense if you copy this. This is my example. When I think about characters from books or movies whom I may be similar to, I think about, weirdly enough, that Megan girl from the Bridesmaids movies. I think about the character of Maleficent in the movie Maleficent, not Sleeping Beauty, where she kind of gets a bad rep. And I think about the character of Anne from the books Anne of Green Gables, which I read like all the time as a kid. And if I were going to pick one to write about, I'd probably pick about her because it's a little more positive. So I'm going to pick Anne of Green Gables, and I'm going to say, why am I so similar to Anne? And the things I already thought about is, when she was young, she wanted to be a writer. Me too. She grew up in a rural town in Canada. Well, I grew up in a rural town here. She ends up being a teacher in a very different situation, but a teacher nonetheless. She has a good imagination. She happens to be an orphan, which is like not similar to me. I have a giant family. So just similarities. And if these were kind of what I wanted to focus on, how could I group at least 2 categorical things together? And it seems to me that maybe wanted to be a writer and a teacher goes together. And maybe something about a rural town or how she grew up. She grows up on a farm, so did I. So maybe we say these categories because of her ambitions, which means things she wants to do, and her, what's a word for like how you grow up? Her, I don't know. Maybe her home, maybe her development, something like that. And we could even put that with that because as she gets older, she develops her imagination. Ultimately, what I would take this to is a thesis statement that's my topic plus my categories. So maybe I say, I find myself similar to the character of Anne in, and here's where you need to use good punctuation. Titles of books should be underlined. So with regard to our development and ambitions. And that's maybe a little fancy, but that's how I would write it. So whatever you do, pick some sort of categorical things. Maybe it's appearance, maybe it's personality, maybe it's problem-solving ability, whatever it is. At least 2 categories. On the back, Just remind yourself you're going to put that thesis as the last statement of your introduction and try to build from there. So think similarities in general, like what's the point of them, and narrow that down. We're here to help. If you have questions, come ask.